I think without a doubt that was Trump's motivation. The money being spent on Afghanistan, Trump was truly focused on the threat of China. And he truly considered that his number one external threat, with Russia kind of a distant second. And he was truly motivated to spend the money where it would do the most good. And spending money deployed in Afghanistan, and there's just this rat hole we were throwing money down. It's a legitimate response to spend our money wisely. But then we turn around and have another Iraq, another Afghanistan, and we have to turn around and fight a war with fighter jets when the enemy doesn't even have an air force, with vast amounts of money spent on it. But I think prioritizing the Chinese threat is legitimate. And I know that was Trump's objective. But I just tell you that the capacity for America to arm and to truly mobilize hasn't really been seen since the 1950s. And the Cold War, the majority of our the majority of our tax dollars going into military. Will the fall of Taiwan, will that mobilize us? Will the fall of South Korea, will that do it? Will the Chinese become more belligerent? It looks like they will. You could very well see, Jimmy Carter was a tragedy in American history, but we needed 4 years of Carter to get 8 years of Ronald Reagan. And Reagan prioritized military dollars, and he had the votes and he had the support to do it. Is there another Ronald Reagan in the background? Will he mobilize us? Will our nation become motivated? If we have a series of 9/11 attacks, if we lose Taiwan and South Korea, you could very well see us in a post-World War II, early Cold War dynamics, in which we stop paying money for the socialist state out there and start putting money into wealth. But there's just too many unknown factors out there right now to see where we're going to go. I think the potential is there in the next presidential election for another Reagan, but there's so many unknown factors. If China is foolish enough to take Taiwan, that by itself would be a mobilizing dynamic. If our enemy is foolish enough to give us multiple 9/11s, that could mobilize our nation in ways we haven't seen in a very long way. And all of those are hanging out there. We don't know what's going to happen, but they're worthy of consideration. And you're asking the right questions. But we have an awful lot of money we could be putting into defense that we're not doing right now. Let's see how it turns out.
There's also dynamics between the different allied nations within the theater around China. So, there generally is a growing threat in terms of the fact I think China now has the biggest navy in the world. I think they've now superseded as well. And so we see the allies in that area now becoming incredibly concerned. And this pertains to not only Taiwan and South Korea, and of course Japan as well, which is a long-time ally against China in terms of the West, but also in the Australia and the Philippines. Those areas, those specific countries that I want to say are almost within this line of naval attack as well, especially in the agreement. I think I saw a video recently about AUKUS, which is a new contract between Australia, the UK, and the US to supply them with new nuclear submarines in a way to control the strait there, one of the biggest shipping routes in the world. So perhaps the shared responsibility of those nations and the US combined could do more good, could do more universal good than just the US alone. Do you think that's a possibility as well?
One of the things we've seen is winning the Cold War. And for generations, we held the line against the Soviets, and we Sun Tzu said the greatest achievement is to win the war without a battle, and that's what happened in the Cold War. Our great achievement was that they never came across that border, and inevitably the Soviet Union collapsed from within. This is an era of treaties and joint cooperation of large scale. This is not England and all of her colonies versus France and all of their colonies. This is, really Churchill in his books, The History of the English-Speaking People, talks about the First World War and the Second World War were actually what we call the 100 Years War and the 7 Years War and what was the French Indian War in America. That's the first time we saw war across the entire world. But it was the Britain and her colonies against France and her colonies, worldwide. It's a different dynamic. We have two nation states, independent nation states, who have stayed together. NATO has been in existence now for well over 50 years, half a century. It's unprecedented in history. So we live in a time in which the potential for treaties to deter a foe is significant. It's been established. It's current in our minds. It is motivating us and guiding us at conscious, unconscious levels. And I think very well, in your list, don't forget Korea or Vietnam, who have already fought a couple of significant spats with China and kicked their tail. And so we've got Vietnam, which is a major force sitting on their border and not having a very positive relationship with China. We've got Thailand, we've got Indonesia, we've got a couple others out there, and of course India. India is enormous potential and is motivated to also as part of that dynamic of restraining China. So the dynamic is there for us to get this treaty and put this string of nations around there and to hold China back. But if we're serious about it, we need to do it economically. The economic boycott of Russia is really what brought them down. We're trading with China. They hold so much of our national debt right now. It would be a win-win if we said, okay, we're not trading with China, and by the way, we're forfeiting all your national debt. We've got a couple of cards to play in this game. And
yeah, I mean,
all
just simply
China holds is one of them.
yeah.